If you're watching these videos in chronological order, as you absolutely should be doing, the past couple videos, you should be in the future, far into the future, watching all of these videos that I've made in chronological order. That's what... No. But if you have been watching the videos I've been putting out, I've been talking about two builds that I very much enjoy. I have a Faith Arcane Caster, as well as an Intelligence Arcane Caster. And the Faith Arcane Caster, we recently made a video about. It has a lot of strength, and it gets us access to Marias' Executioner Greatsword with Eocade's Dancing Blade, which I absolutely love. It's a lot of fun. It's a great weapon, and it goes really well with a bunch of combos that you can do with this build. Flame into Eocade's Dancing Blade, Bloodflame Talon into Eocade's Dancing Blade, etc., etc. It's very nice, and it works well. And I have the opposite version of this build, which is instead of Strength, Dex, and instead of Faith Arcane, it is Intelligence and Arcane. And you could just go Faith if you wanted to, but I like the Arcane stuff because I like the extra spells that you get, like Bloodflame Talon and Blood Boon, stuff like that, as well as some interesting weapons unlock as well. Also, Faith Arcane Casters have a nice spell casting catalyst in the Dragon Communion Seal, which also increases the damage on dragon incantations like this. Intelligence Arcane also gets the same thing with the Albinauric Staff, which is what we're going to be using. And today we're going to be going over the Intelligence Arcane build after this quick look at the Faith Arcane. What is it with the ruin-strewn precipice and all these gankers, you might ask? What it is a place where there's no enemies. They control the level. They control whether or not you can just leave or not by being able to move that elevator. Yeah, they love it here. So this is where any ganker who is more smart than they are good at the game hangs out. Anyway, we have Punished Glen, my Intelligence Arcane build, and we've got the Bleed-infused Lordsworn Straightsword, and we've got a ton of Arcane, so we are pumping out Bleed procs, which means we use the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, and that buffs our spells. And then, on top of that, we have the Albinauric Staff that we cast with, but in our offhand as a soft swap, meaning, you know, it's in our right-hand slot when it's next to the sword. We have the Carrion Sword Sorcery Staff. And there are two Carrion Staffs, so I always forget which one is which. You'll have to, you know, forgive me. But one boosts Glint Blade sorceries, and one boosts Sword sorceries. We're using the Sword sorcery. For the Carrion Slicer, as well as the Carrion Greatsword and the Carrion Piercer. And being an Arcane build also gives us access to the bubble spells, which people would not leave me alone about using. Use the bubble spells, because during the Elden Ring network test before the game came out, I found one of the bubble spells, and it was absolute ass. And as a joke, I was like, "Look how strong this is! Look how overpowered!" And people didn't forget that, and so they kept bothering me to use a bubble. It turns out that while I had forgotten, or had no real interest in bubbles at all, people were figuring out that the bubbles could actually do some pretty funny stuff, and they can. The big bubble especially. And so I love the bubble now. I'm a believer in the bubble. We also have the Gavel of Haima, which does not have... We don't have any sort of buff on spellcasting for that. We don't have a staff for that. It's a Haima sorcery and not a Carrion sorcery. So even if we had our other staff out, it wouldn't matter, because you know, it's not a Carrion Sword sorcery. But it is a good sorcery, especially if you're playing like a melee mage, because it gives you access to a spell with a ton of hyper armor, a lot of damage, and knockdown, which means you get to play guessing games with your opponent when they wake up. And a lot of times I like to do the Gavel of Haima, knock them down, and then do the Carrion Greatsword. Just as a wake-up. Because they get one free roll when they wake up, but then after that, you know, they go back to normal. And the cast time on the Carrion Greatsword is just long enough that it burns the safety roll. So I also have Star Shower on this build, which is not a spell that I particularly enjoy using, but sometimes people are really, really passive, and Star Shower is basically like, okay, well, I'm going to chip away at your health slowly over time with this spell if you're going to be that passive. And it's one of those, like, necessary evils for the build. We've also got, what else? Oh, Night Maiden's Mist. I absolutely love that spell. It does flat damage, and it just eats away at people's health. It starts hitting people before they realize it's like... It will sort of like vibrate your controller a little bit, like, hey, it's doing damage. But it will start eating your health before it does that. And it eats your health quickly. So it's a good spell. And we've got the Collapsing Stars. We use that to pull people into the bubbles. And there you can see the tracking on the bubble is pretty good. If you equip the Arrow's Reach Talisman, it will also increase the range of the bubble where it will go. And it also gives it a much more interesting tracking ability because it starts to track in an insane way. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to hit your opponent. It just means that it will move in strange ways. The bubble is one of those spells that, like, it's not good, but it doesn't need a buff, if that makes sense. The other bubble spell, the bubble spell, there's Great Oracular Bubble, and then there's just Oracular Bubbles or something like that. The little bubble spell could use a buff. Mostly just a tracking buff, and only at the very start of the spell. That's about the only buff it really needs. But Great Oracular Bubble, despite the fact that it's not good, it doesn't really need a buff, in my opinion. But yeah, those are the spells we've got, and we've got all this Arcane, we've got all this Dex, right? So our Lord Sworn Bleed Straight Sword, Longsword, it does decent damage, but its main focus is to try and bleed out our opponents, so that we get the buff for Lord of Blood's Exaltation. And we love that. And at this point, my opponent is spamming Carrion Slicer, and that's a great opportunity for me to use Carrion Greatsword. Carrion Greatsword's one of those spells that's like, if it had Hyper Armor, it'd be too good, but it could really use Hyper Armor. The fact that you can just be knocked out of it makes it kind of meh, honestly, but it is a nice spell when it hits, and it has a ton of hit stun. A Carrion Greatsword will true combo into a straight sword R1, and I prefer to have that property over it having hyper armor, if that makes sense. If it had hyper armor and could true combo, I feel like that would be too much. But no hyper armor and a true combo feels fair. It's just, you're gonna have to, you know, play well to get the hit. Or get lucky. Sometimes you just get lucky. It's better to be lucky than good. But the Carrion Greatsword into the Straight Sword combo, you can follow that up with Carrion Piercer or Gavel of Haima, and either way you go about it is brutal. And probably enough to beat your opponent. But this build, I absolutely love it. Just like my Faith build. I love magic in this game so much. So I've got all these invasions today. with this build. It's very hard for me when I sit down to do invasions. If I'm streaming, it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, let's work on a build, or, you know, what build do you want to watch me play with? And I'll sort of like let people, you know, tell me like, oh, you know, you should use this build. I haven't seen this build in a minute. But when I'm playing by myself and I just want to invade and nobody's watching, these are the two builds that I default to. And I think that says a lot. The other build that I default to is just a standard sword and shield strength build that has like 15 faith or something like that. Those three builds make up, like if I wasn't streaming, those three builds would make up like probably 80% of all my invasions. So what I'm saying is, I hope that you like watching these builds, because you're gonna see them a lot. This invasion area right here with the Draconic Tree Sentinel is, I think, probably the best balanced boss invasion area. It might be a little invader-sided, but if they have 3 friends, this is a great... Like, if it's just 2, just the host and the phantom, it's a little invader-sided. But when it's 3 and an invader and the Draconic Tree Sentinel, I think that's probably like the best invasion with a boss type zone thing that you can get. I know some people will be like, I don't care if it's invader-sided. That's what they get. That's your opinion, and you're not wrong. So both of these builds, the Int and the Faith version, are at like 160-ish, somewhere in that level range, 160. And the reason I chose 160 was I wanted to go a little over 150. I wanted to go a little over 150 to try and get away from like the honest 150 just playing through the game and I'm standing in front of a boss and I'm about to walk into that boss fight invasions that you get. A lot of people have said that it would be nice if there was some sort of feature like, hey, I don't want to invade these areas. When I invade and I use the near-far mechanic, it would be nice to not invade the walk up to Godfrey, or the walk up to Radigan, or the walk up to Moog, or the walk up to Millennia, etc. You'll invade in those areas, and it's just somebody walking into the boss fight, and it's just kind of a waste of time, you know? I wanted to try and avoid some of that, and 150, like right around 150 is like where people beat the game. However, 150 is also like a spot where like dedicated gankers hang out. Like they just gank at level 150, and sometimes they gank those areas because they have no mob support. You can cut off the level from the invader, and they just like to gank there. I would like to get those invasions. And I would also like to get the level 200 honest New Game Plus co-opers who are just, you know, playing through New Game Plus and having little adventures. You would like to get the perfect balance between those. And so I went to 160, and it's worked out pretty well. Obviously, you could just go to 200, but I don't know, it's a lot of levels to level up to 200. Like, it's a bunch. And so I just get kind of lazy, and I would really like to keep some of those level 150 invasions in, you know? So, I don't want to fight the dedicated gankers all the time, but I don't mind fighting them, you know, every 3rd or 4th invasion, you know? It's a nice little change of pace and a nice little mix-up. on the topic of who we would like to invade, people are all the time talking about, like, covenants, and I've mentioned before that it would be cool if there was an invader finger that would allow you to invade the person you last invaded. Like as a sort of, like, revenge finger. Something like that would be awesome. But, I'll throw another one on the list. I would love it if there was a finger that only invaded a host who had phantoms or was wearing the blue summon ring. That way, you know for sure you're going to invade somebody who is, like, at least kind of co-oping. And you know you don't have to expect, like, solo one-on-one duels with people who don't want to go to the arena because, you know, people always ask, why don't those people go to the arena? Like when I'm streaming and I fight like a solo host, people always ask, like, why don't they go to the arena? And the solo hosts who are just standing at a grace, and, you know, they're chugging their 15 flasks, and they've got their rune arc active, they can't have those advantages in the arena. And I said this the other day in a video, and a bunch of people were like, nuh-uh, not me. And since then, I knew that would happen. Since then, whenever I stream and I find a solo host, it is always the thing I said it was. And I make a little joke about it. And I say, nuh-uh, not me. But the point I'm trying to make is I'm not the governor of invasions. You know, do whatever the hell you want. Just when people are like, yo, this sucks, none of us like it, you don't get to be like, no, you do like it. You do like me. No. You know? It's fine if you do it. There's no rule that says you can't do it. But there's also no rule that everybody isn't going to say, like, God, this guy's annoying. So, that's what you get. That's the trade-off. But, yeah, if I could invade people who, like, had the blue thing on, and I knew it, I knew that they had it, right? And I could invade co-opers, that would be the only finger I ever used. Is the finger that lets that, you know. And you would think that that's how it would be. Since we already have the duelist finger, like, if you want to duel, there's a finger for that, and if you want to fight duelists, there's a summon for that. Outside of the arena. But even that's not enough. They gotta bring invaders into the mix. So that they can, you know, I guess have more activity in the most petty way possible. I'll stop ranting. I won't, but I'll stop ranting about that. My point being, sometimes people are like, oh, is that scummy? I didn't know I was being scummy. And I understand that a lot of people are just, you know, they're new. They haven't thought through, like, maybe they don't even know that invaders have their flasks cut. Maybe they don't know that invaders can't have rune arcs. Maybe they don't know that invaders can see when you have a rune arc active. And these are just things that they don't know because they're new. And, you know, I kind of feel bad for the players who are new. They hear me rant. And, you know, I'm not trying to make you feel like a jerk, is what I'm getting at. If you're new, I'm not trying to make you feel like a jerk. And I'm not the governor of the game, and you can do whatever you want. If you're interested in PvP, if you're interested in, like, the community side of things, and what people do and talk about, you know, just hang out in places where that happens, and, you know, you'll sort of pick up on it. Etiquette is a thing that is, you know, it's a video game. Etiquette's not, it doesn't matter really. But if you are interested in trying to have a good time for yourself, but also have a good time, like your opponents are also having a good time, if that is something you're interested in, like there is an entire little community dedicated to that. Look at that bubble. Look at that bubble. Come on now. That's what I'm saying. It's not good, but it doesn't need a buff. And you can imagine if I were using the right... Is there a staff that buffs the bubble spell? Is there some sort of like Clayman thing that boosts bubbles? Or does the Albinoric staff... I don't think the Albinoric staff boosts bubbles, even though they are an arcane spell. Anyway, my point being, if we had something like that, then that bubble right there would have absolutely one-shot that guy during his Rivers of Blood spam, and that would have been hilarious. But it's funny. I'm watching this video. It's Saturday morning. It's actually Saturday afternoon now. I'm drinking my coffee, and I am getting ready to do some invasions to make some more videos. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I can't wait to play more with this build. And then I'm like, no, don't play with this build again, because you need to make videos with other builds. But I don't wanna. I kind of want to combine these two builds now. I want to make a Faith Int build that doesn't even use a weapon. It just uses the Dragon Communion Seal and the Albinoric Staff. Would it be a good build? No. But I think I could do some funny stuff with it. What do you think? I think I'm going to do it. Okay, that's the end of this video. I appreciate y'all hanging out and watching it. I hope you enjoyed all the invasions. And I will see you real soon. Until then, later y'all.